Hey, everybody, welcome to the third episode of the Retro Wrestling Review Podcast. I'm your host, Gene Jackson, and we are back here again, ready to take another trip to the third week in January in 1993 in the USWA. But before we do that, you know what we got to do? We got to tag in our favorite co-host. Let's get him in here right now. There they are, Josh Briley, Richard Mullikin from P3 Radio. Guys, how are you doing?
Doing great, man. Feeling great. Loving life. And this podcast has been awesome, by the way. This has been something fun I've been looking forward to every week. So can't wait to get on here and review another episode of USWA Championship Wrestling from 1993.
Yeah, man. Gotta love it. I feel like you're rubbing it in Gene's face, though. You feel loving life, man. Feeling great. Gene's over there about to die.
This has been acting.
We just spent 10 minutes talking about I've been on my deathbed for 3 days. The first words I click record, and he's like, "Now I'm feeling great, loving life." I just felt like there was a big cool, man. Great.
No, it's all acting. It's all improv. I think I've been going through the same stuff for about a month now.
You wouldn't know we were states away from each other right now. You think we got plagued with the same thing almost. But yeah, I'm a little under the weather. My voice does not sound great. I apologize, but we want to try to keep this train on the track because, like you guys said, we're having a lot of fun with it. And thank you guys that are watching and listening, man. We're going to spend a lot of time here on the front end of the show, carrying on about this, but we are overwhelmed and thrilled with the response we're getting, with the views and the listens and the downloads, the rankings we're getting in the top. I mean, I never even imagined. I never even thought about us getting ranked in the top 100 podcast after we did this for weeks, because there's 10,000 wrestling podcasts out there by now.
Seems that way.
And then, in the first 24 hours after the first episode got released, we were 69. And after a couple of days, we got up to 55, and then we kind of hung out there at 58. And the timeline on this is kind of off, guys. When we recorded this, episode 2 hasn't actually dropped yet. Just curtain there. So I don't know how it went. It may have went through the bottom. It may have went completely through the floor. But nonetheless, for those of you that are still here, still with us, thank you so much. And we promise, even if the wrestling isn't always great, we're always going to have fun with it. And there's always some more fun stuff on the horizon. 1993 USWA, I'm telling you folks, is just all over the page. You are not going to believe these two guys, Josh and Richard, are just like me. They watched Memphis wrestling for years and years. And yes, I know there's some big names that pass through Memphis, but I'm absolutely shocked at some of the faces we're going to see in the Memphis studio and in the Mid-South Coliseum in a USWA ring coming up in the coming months. It's going to be a fun ride. Speaking of fun rides, let's get going right here. So Dave Brown, in this episode, welcomes us back to another episode of USWA Wrestling. Corey Macklin lets us know what to expect, including the King in action against Jeff Gaylord, as we go to the first of what we feels like many breaks today, guys. I don't know. It felt like we had more commercial breaks than normal. Maybe that's just me. But we get to our first one, and then we return. We just get right down to business, man. We just go ahead and have some fun. Right out of the gate, we come back from that commercial to a promo from Bert Prentice and our new favorite wrestler, as he calls himself, the Mean Man, Mike Miller. Check this out.
Let me tell you something, Dave Brown. I've had a problem all my life, and that's women fighting over me. Shut up! All my life, my sisters fought over me, seeing which one's going to carry me around. In school, the girls used to fight over me and all. Well, let me tell you something. Last week, we had a little deal here. 2 of the beautifulest women, they are gorgeous, come out here. They had a little disagreement, as you well know. Well, let me tell you, the Mean Man, being the type of person that I am, I went and had a long talk with him. There's one thing that I've done, and I think I've done real well. I went out and I united these 2 women. They come up. I sat them down. I had a real long talk with them. I explained to them, look, hey, I'm big enough for both of you. The way I am, I'll share my affections with both of you. You don't have to fight each other. You don't have to pull hair. You don't have to poke out eyes. Just let me know. I'll have one here and I'll have one here, Dave Brown. And let me tell you something. I did it. Probably the only man in professional wrestling to unite two of the best-looking women that walk the streets of Memphis. Because I tell you what, they are. And one other thing, they told me they'll stand by my side. Bert, as you well know, anything that I do, whatever I do, they'll be right there with me. They'll come up. In fact, look at here. Look at these women here. Look at here.
Leslie Ballinger and, well, I tell you what, Laura Davenport, and they do seem to be pretty happy with the situation.
You look awful green with envy. Is that a nice threesome or what?
Well, whatever problems existed, they seem to have them worked out. I guess that's what it looks like. Yeah,
You like this, Dave Brown? Look at here, huh? I got my cake and I'm eating it too.
All right. Now, I know you guys have probably got a few things to say about that.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
My first takeaway from this, big takeaway, is Lauren Davenport's attire has changed a lot since last week's Quaker dress that she looked like she was on her way to teach Sunday school or churn butter in.
Right.
But from the home office in Memphis, Tennessee, in the spirit of the old David Letterman show, we've got the top 6 best lines from that Mike Miller promo. So, number 6, I've always had a problem with women fighting over me. That's a good one. Yep. Number 5, these are 2 of the most beautifulest women. Number 4, I'm big enough for both of them. This one here is almost on the nose, and he doesn't even realize it. 2 of the best-looking women walking the streets of Memphis, because they certainly look like a couple of streetwalkers there in Memphis. And of course, the number 2 line, I can have my cake and I can eat it too. And of course, the number 1 line was not spoken by Mike Miller, but in fact was spoken by Mr. Bert Prentice. Dave Brown, is that a nice threesome or what? Oh my. And to his point, there you go, right there. Folks, that is not a screen grab from a 70s porno. That is 1993 USWA, I promise. What do you think, guys?
That is a nice threesome.
It is. I think it is funny that anytime a person has worn a leather hat and biker gloves and said they've united women, it's usually involved a blowtorch of some sort. But I think the funny thing about that whole situation was in the middle of it, he's like, I'm used to women carrying me. Like, what? Carrying you? It's like, Mike Miller's a man that likes piggyback rides, and now I've got 2 women.
Well, he threw in about his sisters fighting over him, and and I was like, all right, let's move past that, Mike. What are we doing?
But the attire of what Mike Miller is wearing now, it's like starving artist almost, like it's like if you ordered an Uber and he pulls up on a Harley and he's like, what are you doing? Get on.
He's got a fucking sidecar or something on there.
I mean, that don't scream tough guy to me. I mean, he looks like an extra from the Blue Oyster Bar in one of those Police Academy movies back in the day. You know, I mean,
that hat just screams, "Do not trust me." You know what I mean?
They come walking out. I was like, wait a minute, what happened to Davenport here? She had on a freaking grandma dress last week. Now she's dressed like a hooker.
That's what I immediately told Richard. I said, damn, that's why she had on that church lady dress. She was hiding them good legs, man.
Yeah, got the pop from Josh. As soon as she walked out, he was like, hey.
Oh, she would get the pop from Josh for sure.
Yeah. I mean, that match last week would have made a little more sense if we'd have seen that last week. You know what I mean? The stakes would have felt a little higher if we'd have seen that last week. But
it seemed like he was just fighting over like just 2, maybe like 3s at best, It was like, yeah, I'm fighting over 3s. Whatever. 2
of the beautifulest women. 2 of the best looking women walking the streets of Memphis. That's definitely fun. Now I got to say, when we started this, I did not expect to take a liking to Mike Miller, but I got to say, so far, he's the standout. I mean, I'm not saying he's the best wrestler, but he's certainly the most fun. I don't know if you guys agree with that, but
he's been featured enough, that's for sure. That kind of makes you wonder, what was his relationship with either Jarrett or Jerry Lawler? Like, like we were talking about in the text group, did he mail, I guess back then, did he mail that 8x10 from 1982 and then show up, 10 years later, like, yeah, it's me, swear to God.
Yeah. We're 3 weeks in and we have still not seen one wrestling move from Mike Miller.
No.
Well, he don't have to do that kind of stuff.
I mean, it's like we have seen more wrestling moves by this time, 3 weeks in, from Kamala than we saw from Mike Miller. Mike Miller, now he can throw a chair with the best of them. Yes. I will say that.
He is second to none in chair throwing.
But I guess the cherry on top, though, is he's a great character. And that's something like Memphis has always been rich of, is great characters, diverse characters.
But I mean, everybody wants to talk about their Mount Rushmore of this and that in wrestling. I mean, if my Mount Rushmore of wrestling chair throwers, it's just 4 pictures of Mike Miller.
Yeah.
That's all I got.
I don't know anybody else that can throw a chair better.
And folks, if you do, send it to us.
Yeah.
Tag us on Twitter at USWA Podcast, because I would love to see it. And I'm probably going to call you a liar because I just can't imagine there is. But maybe there is. Maybe
Sabu was pretty good from what I remember.
Yeah, but it wasn't at that distance. It wasn't at that distance.
Yeah, the distance is what did it.
Yeah.
And Sabu was really inconsistent a lot of the time. He did nail some good ones, but now his average would have been all over the place because some of them ended up in the crowd. And
gotcha. Which he didn't care about.
Oh yeah, he didn't care for a variety of reasons. But so then we get a promo from Bert Prentice, and now he's saying he can prove the Bubba Johnson claims once and for all. And needless to say, Dave Brown's a little skeptical. I had to break this into 2 different clips because of the time limits on StreamYard. But there was a lot covered here, and I think folks are going to be shocked at who turns up on Memphis Wrestling in 1993. Lord knows I was.
What if I produced this lady today and she says it right out of her own mouth? She was married to Bubba. She knows everything about him. What would you say then, Dave Brown?
I don't know.
Now, Dave, you know who this is?
Yeah. Sapphire from the WWF.
This is Sapphire Johnson. This, yes, she was married to Bubba Johnson. Were you not?
Yes, indeed, I was.
Thank you. Sapphire, it's so good to see you.
Thank you.
Now, I'm going to ask her some simple questions that I know everybody out there wants to know. Sapphire would never tell a lie. She has the highest integrity in the professional wrestling business. Were you or were you not, or are you still married to Bubba Johnson?
I'm still married to Bubba Johnson.
What are you doing out here?
Well, I couldn't help but be affected by what I'm hearing out here. Now, scoot over there just a second. You're like an eclipse. You're blocking out the entire sun. Move over there just a second. Sapphire, Jerry Lawler.
How are you?
It's a pleasure to meet you again, and I've
you met him before?
Yeah.
That's right. And I have, as a matter of fact, I've been a big fan of yours. I saw you when you were, everybody remember when she was in the WWF? Exactly. Now, how long were you in the WWF? You were there for quite a while, weren't you?
2 years.
2 years up there. And everybody knows WWF, let's face it, I mean, you make pretty good money there, right?
Yeah.
You were doing well?
Doing well.
All right, now, don't worry about it, Bert. I'm just trying to get to the bottom of this, okay? Now, but you're not with the WWF anymore?
No, my contract's up.
So your contract's up. How long has that been?
About 2 years now. Almost 2 years.
Now, this is maybe a little bit personal, but he's been asking you some personal questions. Now, it's no secret that if a person gets used to making good money, and then all of a sudden, when your contract goes, it goes. Have you been doing anything since? Have you been working wrestling anywhere?
No.
You don't have to answer that. You do not have to answer that.
Well, what I'm trying to get at is the fact that if with those checks not coming in anymore, sometimes things can get a little tight, right?
Yeah, very tight. Very tight.
Well, because the reason I'm getting to this is because I've just heard through the grapevine that you being up here today is not necessarily a coincidence. Is it true? And I just want you to be honest. Is it true? Did Bert Prentice pay your way or pay you to come up here today and substantiate what he's saying?
Yes.
Yes.
So we got a little more to add on to that. But before we get there, let's recap what we've seen so far. So it turns out, what a coincidence this is, guys, that Sweet Sapphire from WWF fame, the famous valet / manager / dancing partner of the American Dream, Dusty Rhodes, happens to be married to Bubba Johnson, who Bert Prentice has been telling us for weeks is actually just Miss Texas, who had a sex change and used to be a guy.
Small world.
I think the most shocking statement made out of that entire promo right there was to find out that Jerry Lawler's a big fan of Sapphire. Had no idea. So let's got another minute or so of this. Let's see where this goes. As Sapphire now is probably about to get a little upset with Mr. Prentice.
So I want the truth to be told. I'll pay for the truth to be told.
So you paid her way, or either you're paying her to be here to say this today.
First class ticket.
But you were really married to Bubba Johnson.
Yes, I really was married to Bubba Johnson.
He was a fighter, boxer, wrestler, all this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
All right, here's what I want to do right now so that we can get right to the bottom.
No, what we're going to...
That's a woman!
Exactly.
I'm not married to no woman! So what are you doing?
No,
What?
you don't understand. That's...
I'm not gay!
No, I know that. That's Bubba. That's Bubba Johnson.
That's not Bubba Johnson.
Yes, it is.
Whoa.
Bubba Johnson.
Oh, boy. Ballinger jumping on Sapphire here.
Yeah.
It's 3 against 1. Look at Prentice over here, too.
What is 2-6?
Here comes some help.
Help, though. Yeah, Miss Texas. Jumped on, got both of them in there. And helped out Sapphire. Well, good to see Miss Texas.
With an ass and 4-inch heels.
Yeah.
I was just about to say, I mean, watching poor Miss Texas try to run out there in those heels, good Lord, it's a miracle she didn't break an ankle. That is quite the feat. But she managed to save. So Sapphire was wailing on Bert pretty good there before, Leslie Ballinger and Lauren Davenport came out to attack poor Sapphire. And then here comes Miss Texas to save the day. So, guys, let's take a look at the story arc here. Last week, Lauren Davenport, she tried to be Brian Christopher's valet, got turned down. Tried to be Jarrett's valet, got turned down. Tried to be Lawler's valet, got assaulted. Then hooked up almost literally with Mike Miller on camera on the TV show, was confronted by Laura Ballinger, who was mad that she's out there making out with her man. They get into a fight, roll around on the floor, which turns into a match between the two last Monday night. Now, in this show, they are now part of a defined, what they called a threesome. And trust me, guys, if it wasn't for copyright laws, we would have played the song Come Together behind that promo earlier when Mike Miller was describing all that. They're involved in a threesome with Mike Miller. And now, in just a span of 2 weeks' time, she is involved in a tag team with Laura Ballinger and Leslie Ballinger and Laura. It's hard to say those names together.
Yeah.
Ballinger and Davenport, let's just say that, against Miss Texas and Sapphire. Did you ever in your lives think you would see any of those pairings happen, much less a tag team match against each other?
Yeah, I mean, it's a dream match everybody talks about, right? I think the biggest thing about that is like Sapphire is just not needed. Did you see Miss Texas just manhandle those two women? She's side rushing leg sweep both of them at the same time.
Let me tell you something, and I mean this sincerely as I know how to be. If you put me in a time machine right now, took me back to 1993 and took me to the TV5 studios, it was like, Gene, you got to fist fight somebody on the USWA roster right now. There's probably 20-something people I would pick. I would not fight Miss Texas. I would almost rather fight a Moondog over Miss Texas, because at least I might could get away from them, or at least they'd wear themselves out beating on me with that chair after a while. Right. But I figure Miss Texas would just beat me to death, because you're not going to blow her up. And I mean, some of the beatings I seen her put on those, like the jobbers that Kevin Sullivan was wrestling when she was at ringside for Kevin Sullivan, was just, I mean, fantastic. But yeah, I mean, I feel bad for Miss Texas in this time period, because, God, some of the people she had to try to pull matches out of. Woo.
And she did it without, like, how many times have we seen her on TV since we started reviewing this? This is number one, right?
Yeah, this is the first time we've actually seen her on television.
And week after week after week leading up to this, they've Miss Texas versus so-and-so. So that shows how strong Miss Texas was back then, just from word of mouth and people talking about her. She's whipping somebody's ass Monday. Don't even have to be at TV to tell you about it.
Oh, yeah, she was super over. And, I mean, like you say, Miss Texas and Sapphire, it's the dream tag team we didn't know we needed, but now that we've got it, thank God we do. I can't wait to hear the results. I can't wait to get to the end of the show to hear how that played out, because I'm sure there's bound to be a clean finish in that one.
Right.
There's a couple of fun quotes that we could pull from that. We'll just blow past them. Sure a couple of you caught them. If not, listen to them again. Moving on. So on the television show, we went to break, and when we come back from the break, we see highlights of Brian Christopher finally accomplishing his mission that he's been on for weeks and weeks. And rather than me spoiling it by saying it, let's just let you see some highlights.
Jarrett hanging on the middle rope, and look at Zeke Rivers on there. Rivers choking Jeff on that middle rope. Got this cane, and Valley lets loose as referee Frank Morrell just jumps back up on the apron. Well, Frank Morrell is in there. Here comes Mr. Clyde. Whoa! Tried to catch Jarrett with a splash and misses. Jeff Glover's Clyde rolls up Brian Christopher. 1, 2. Oh, boy. Zeke Rivers over calling for some help from the back. I don't know who he's calling for. Mike Samples and Bert Prentice come jumping in the vein. They jump up on the apron, and Jarrett covers both of them. Ooh, Christopher nails him from behind, though. Look at Jeff Jarrett, though. Grabs Christopher, nailing away at him, and Samples and Prentice holding Jeff's feet. 3. Oh, boy. Well, we've got a new Southern Heavyweight champion at 1640.
I'll be damned. Every person who said they weren't going to help Brian Christopher helped Brian Christopher. And in fact, they were all holding the legs of Jeff Jarrett as the referee counted. Just lucky he wasn't looking back and didn't notice that Jeff's legs were completely under the ropes as everybody held his legs. But,
the only one with integrity was Miss Davenport.
That's right.
She was the only one that said, forget Brian Christopher, and didn't.
Actually did.
Yeah.
Go figure. The one with integrity. I'd have lost that bet, right? I mean,
yeah.
Just kidding. I'm sure she was a wonderful lady. I tell you what, funny little side note here, folks. And I'm not knocking him. I like Corey Macklin. I enjoy his commentary. But if you ever want a fun drinking game on a Saturday night, take a drink every time Corey Macklin says, "In there." Shoots him out the ropes in there, hits him with the cane in there, wig, backdrop in there. You will be effed up like a soup sandwich before the show is halfway over. I never noticed that, but I was telling these guys before we started recording, in these last couple of days of me being sick, I've watched a ton of USWA shows just randomly, and I had forgotten. I guess maybe I knew it one time. Maybe I haven't never watched so much in a row, but yeah, Corey Macklin throws "in there" after almost everything he says, or at least pretty frequently. And now I can't unhear it, and it drives me nuts. So now I've bestowed that upon all of you, so you can hate me accordingly.
Takes away all the mystery of what his bedroom talk was like, right?
Gonna put it right in there.
In there.
That's ridiculous.
That's ridiculous.
Come on now.
But I love how he's always just almost everything he says sounds like he's just belligerent about it. Like he's just so emotional at all times. But I mean, so we have watched, we're on our third episode. We're in the third week of January, and this has been going since the end of 1992. But just for what we've been watching, Brian Christopher has been on this mission to regain the Southern Heavyweight title because he had held it for a long time before Jeff Jarrett won it from him. So what are you guys' thoughts?
I think it's a great story. I think, having everyone come in at the end and help was a great story. It's like your heel cannot beat your champion. And then he has to go through like 3 or 4 people to get him to that point. I think it's, like I said, I think it's a great story to have your heel in that position.
But it was kind of weird, just if you're a kid and you see how everything's set up, and I'm thinking, well, okay, Jeff, he knows he's going out there with at least 5, 6 people going to be at the ring, 4 of for sure, and probably more. Shouldn't he have had at least the King out there or somebody?
But I think that is the draw of this match was that all of them turned their back.
In theory, nobody was going to be out there. They all claimed that they weren't going to help him because each time somebody came out last week and said they were willing to help him, he immediately called for Eddie Marlin to come out and put their hair on the line, and then they walked away and said, well, never mind, we're not doing it. So in theory, it was supposed to finally be the one-on-one encounter, and there was just no way that Jeff Jarrett wasn't going to beat him and shave Brian Christopher's head.
Right.
And then, we see in the beginning of the clip, because I think they kind of made their way out there one time. Zeke Rivers makes his way out, and then we end up with Mr. Clyde, and then the whole, barrage of them out there, as you said, except for Davenport. But yeah, so, good story, classic Memphis storytelling. They throw us a few curves in there, and they establish some ground rules, and then they remind us like, it don't matter. We don't have to do what we said we were going to do. None of these stipulations mean nothing. So nobody was going to be at ringside, but yet everybody was at ringside. And Jeff's got a little bit to say about that. He's going to have a quick match, and then, I'm sure you guys can't imagine how this is going to turn out.
Well, Dave, I've had almost now a week to think about it, and it just makes me sick to my stomach to realize that Brian Christopher's probably going to his little girlfriend's house with that belt, and he's probably showing it everywhere he can. Well, Brian, this is probably going to be my only opportunity to tell you something. What you ought to do is you ought to take that belt and you ought to send it to wherever they make belts at, and you ought to get you 3 more. And then you ought to get Mike Samples and Bert Prentice and your 2 other stooges, and you ought to present one to each one of those guys. Because, Brian, you didn't beat me. It was your 4 stooges plus you, plus the rope, and plus everything else. Brian, it makes me sick because me or any other top contender could probably beat all 4 of your stooges at the same time.
Don't worry about Brian. You got to get past me first. Come on, let's get the match going.
All right, Dave.
Okay, Jeff, thank you.
One time, that's what he said. What a baboon is this idiot? Does he realize how people at home look at him? They're sitting there laughing. Yeah, Jeff, I'm sure. 4 men of any caliber could beat Jeff Jarrett or any man alive. Nobody can beat 4 men at the same time.
From behind.
Yeah.
Oh, now they all
Jump in there.
It's not 4 against 1, it's 5 against 1.
Hey, the Master Terror says hold him up. He comes off the rope, jumps out on Jeff, and they all on Jeff Jarrett in there. 5 against 1, yeah.
Look out, Prentice.
Here comes ball boy Prentice.
Splash. While he was being held down by the master, Jarrett Zeke Rivers, now Clyde with a splash.
Oh, boy.
And I tell you,
Mike Samples over choking Jeff Jarrett. Zeke Rivers gets some kicks in, he and Prentice. Master Terror nailing away on Jeff. Boy, this is ridiculous. The jump on Jeff Jarrett in here. 5 against 1 is what it is. Boy, needs some help for Jeff. Here comes Jeff, the key. Jerry Lawler comes in, and oh, look at that. All 5 of them go running out of there.
Yep, that gets rid of them right there.
At one point, it was 6-1 when Jeff gave Mike Samples his arms back. He got splashed and he was holding his ribs, and Mike Samples just did this. And he went, "Here, hold me."
Mr. Clyde's got to get one in.
Mr. Clyde's got to get his in.
Yeah.
This will be the only thing he gets in for a long time.
Oh.
So one little nitpick I'm going to throw in here, just because I noticed you could hear it in that clip. In my research, just to kind of make it a point, and I don't want us to be one of those podcasts where we're sitting around griping about the Wrestling Observer newsletter. But when I was doing research on all this, I always like to, I watch the shows and I go and look through Observers and all these different things to see what people were saying about, everything. And whoever reported on this in the Observer said that the Master of Terror was Ken Raper. But clearly that was Ken Wayne, because you could hear his voice when he hollered at Jarrett to get a ring. And that's clearly it was Ken Wayne's voice. That's nitpicky minor little thing, but just an example. They don't always get it right. Sometimes they're wrong. But, so, Jarrett throws out there that anybody, me or any other decent wrestler, could beat all four of those guys by themselves. They all hit the ring on him. And then afterwards, Bert Prentice gets over there and he really harps on this and says, Jeff Jarrett wants to shoot his mouth off that he could beat all four of us in a match. Well, put us in a match with him. Put us in a match with all four of us and we'll beat Jeff Jarrett. So, as they're out there saying that, Jeff Jarrett didn't take too kindly to that, guys, and, let's see how that played out.
Mike, I don't believe you like the kid, for one thing, and then all of you jump in there on it.
Dave, did we ask you to say anything? Of course not, we didn't. Jeff Jarrett couldn't beat Bert Prentice by himself.
Oh, look out, look out, look out. I don't know about 4 against 1, but it looks like he's doing a pretty doggone good job. 3 against 1 right there, and Jeff Jarrett is taking care of every one of them.
Yes, sir.
They are gone. They are out of here. And Jeff, understandably upset after what happened there when they jumped in there a few minutes ago. So he found a bit of an equalizer.
That's all right, Eddie. I said it in passing just a few minutes ago that I could whip all 4 of your stooges, Brian Christopher. Well, Eddie, give me a match. And I want all 4 of them in there. Samples, Prentice, and what other 2 goofs you can find.
You're mad now, and you're saying something that you don't really mean.
I mean it.
No, wait a minute. You've already got 2 matches signed now.
I can find more boards where those come from. Get all 4 of them out here. I want them all 4 in the ring at one time, one match.
You don't need to do it. You already got matches signed.
I'm sick and tired of hearing people every time. Oh, Eddie Marlin protects you. He protects Jerry Lawler. Well, how much protecting are you going to do with all 4 of those guys in the ring against me at one time?
I don't protect him. I don't protect Lawler. Sign the match.
That's exactly right.
All right. So let's take a look at a couple of screenshots there, just in case you missed this. It went by fast enough. Here's Mr. Clyde taking one to the dome there. He splits it over his head. That's tremendous. And look at poor Mike Samples right after taking it to the look at that face.
This shit didn't break on me.
We told him to gimmick the Ace Hardware board, not hit me with it.
Oh my gosh. That is the greatest screenshot we've had so far from any of these shows. That's hilarious. One thing I forgot to mention a minute ago, I guess I'm tickled at the arm comment. I actually end up watching these usually at least twice, if not 3 times, in the process of blowing through it, then making notes, and then having to go through and get all these clips and all this kind of stuff. A little peek at how this is all done. But the first time I watched this, I was like, where the hell was Lawler when they jumped him in the ring during his match? Like, it took a long ass time for Lawler to come save him. And we know Lawler's there, already dressed, everything's right, because he was just out there jawing with Prentice. But when I rewatched it again and caught that line that Jerry Lawler said that he was a big fan of Sapphire, I can only assume that he was back there getting an autograph. He was probably getting a couple, it wasn't like now where you just whip your phone out. He probably had to run down to the corner store and get one of those little disposable cameras so that he could get a couple of shots with Sapphire, so everybody could know that, hey, I got to meet Dusty Rhodes' freaking manager this morning. So
not only that,
kayfabe explanation right there.
He was such a big fan of her that immediately he let her get jumped 3-on-1. He just left.
He ain't coming back out there again, guys. I mean, come on now. he had somewhere to be. But yeah, he wasn't that big a fan. But he had seen her before. But man, unfairly, in my opinion, and I know Josh at least agrees with this because he kind of put him over on a recent episode. But I think very unfairly, a lot of people shit on Jeff Jarrett. I think he was a great babyface, and we've seen that every week here so far. I don't know sure, some of his gear looks, questionable, and it certainly don't look badass, but he's a fiery babyface. He's in great shape. He cuts a passionate promo. Like, there's people in the past have made that, that Goulish reference, to the old Georgia Nick Goulish thing. And to me, yeah, maybe early on, maybe Jerry pushed him a little sooner than maybe he was ready for. And, there was going to be that jealousy. But by this point, Jeff Jarrett was he's right beneath Lawler. I mean, it's Lawler and then Jeff Jarrett and then Brian, and then we'll duke it out from there on everybody else. Am I wrong there? Or, you guys think that's a fair assessment?
No, to me, man, it was right around the end of 1990s when Jeff kind of slid on up there, right up under Lawler. In my mind, that's when it happened, because that's when he started, growing. Like he went from being that skinny little pissant ref in 86, just getting the shit beat plumb out of him in the ring, the day I'm talking about. And he just kept getting bigger and bigger. And now, he looks like a grown man out there.
That was what we said during that break. It's like, man, Jeff is jacked here, compared to where he was. Like you said, if they were pushing him down everyone's throats when he looked like he did when he was the skinny ref, then fair play. But dude looks like one of the best looking wrestlers they have in the territory at this time.
Yeah, in 86, 87, if you'd put him out there with, Downtown Bruno, Brother Ernest, Tojo, and whoever your fourth manager wants to be, I'd have still been like, yeah, them managers could kick his ass. He's scrawny.
Yeah.
But, here, he come off like, the Stone Cold of 1993. And that board splitting over Mr. Clyde, I've watched that I don't know how many times, because it pops me every single time. It's such a great one.
Do you think that the reason why people do have that criticizing thing of Jeff was because they saw when he started and he was that small and they just can't get past that?
I think that's what it was, that became, it's that way in wrestling and really that way in life. People get painted with a certain brush early enough and it just kind of sticks and they never really shake it. And I think that's kind of what it was. That once he got labeled that way, he just kind of unfairly carried that label with him for years. And then, then of course, then he goes and starts, people always said at WCW, he only got pushed because his buddies with Russo, and then TNA, him and his dad owned the company. And there was always some reason to not give Jeff his due in every scenario, other than the push he got in WWF. And even then, people go, well, he only made it to WWF and got the Intercontinental title because Jerry was helping out Vince, and Vince was, afraid he was going to go to prison and all that. So there's just always been a justification people can find, the smart mark types that can diminish everything he's ever done. But I think he's done very well, and I think he probably could have succeeded in wrestling even if his dad wasn't Jerry Jarrett. I don't know that he would have gotten into the business as if his dad wasn't Jerry Jarrett. I don't think he was really drawn to it initially to hear him talk. But I think he still was, if he would have followed the same path, like I said, getting bigger and, doing what he did, I don't think that really mattered after a while that his last name was Jarrett. I think at times it probably hindered him more. I think there was probably more people that held that against him, just like the famous, the Steve Austin story, how he held grudges from the USWA because Jeff made that comment in the locker room one time, and Austin never forgot it. And then he wouldn't work with him years later in the Attitude Era and all that fun stuff, which we'll let you listen to other podcasts to hear that whole story. It doesn't fit where we're at right now. But anyway, I just wanted to kind of sidebar there for a minute and talk about Jeff Jarrett, because I don't think he always gets the love he deserves. I think some people are coming around now that he has his own podcast, and people are, able to kind of learn a little more about him and hear like, oh, he's not really a piece of shit. He just plays one on TV. He's actually a really cool guy. And, and man, look at him now. I mean, my God, the age he is, the shape he's in, the matches he's still able to have out there is unbelievable. I mean, his performance in that Ric Flair's last match, Abomination in Nashville, was the only saving grace of that whole debacle.
Yeah.
If we want to be honest, but anyway, that's a whole other podcast.
And we had him on our show right before he went back with WWE. Super nice guy, like way nicer than he should have been. And I mean, that's a compliment to him because, a guy that's been where he's been, he didn't have to be as nice to do our show and to talk to us for as long as he talked to us. So yeah, super nice dude.
And if you want to hear that, go to, anywhere that you listen to podcasts, go to P3 Radio. If you're listening to this, as most of you are, it's the letter P, the number 3 radio all together. Jeff Jarrett, search that and you'll find that episode. It's a great one. Check it out. And right now we're going to take our first podcast break of the show and we'll be right back.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Give Me Back My Pro Wrestling, the podcast that's based on the old school but can still help you find the good stuff from today. Jimmy Street and the Plastic Sheik, Jarrett, are the undisputed tag team champions of the wrestling podcast world. From thought-provoking topics to superstar interviews to action figure expertise. This team does it all, and all they ask is, give me back my pro wrestling! Every other Thursday, wherever you listen to podcasts.
Hey guys, this is Wolfie D from PG-13. Check out my podcast, Live and in Color with Wolfie D, every Monday at noon. We're talking Memphis, we're talking ECW, WCW, WWF, everywhere that I've been. We even have some great guests, some Hall of Famers on the show with us. Every Monday at noon, Live and in Color with Wolfie D.
All right, guys, we are back. And as we return from the break, we've got footage from the end of the Moondogs versus the Harris brothers last week. And then we're going to kind of have a medley of the heel promo that happened afterwards because we got a barrage of guys talking. We're not going to hear everything from everybody, but we're going to hear a little bit from everybody. And I think we'll all get the gist. So let's check this out real quick.
Hey, the Moondogs grab the titles and go to head it out while the Bruise Brothers jump on Lawler. They double team Jerry over there, both of them beating up on the King. While the Moondogs have got the belts. Lawler gets out of the way. Strap of the King comes down. Meanwhile, look at Brian Christopher. He jumps in on it. The Moondog and Christopher going in at it. Here comes Mean Mike Miller. He jumps in it. Now the way on.
Jeff Jarrett, Jerry Lawler, all of a sudden, boys, you want to play with the Bruise Brothers. You run interference for the Moondog, that's good and fine. But come said, you're going to have the toughest match of your long careers, boys. It's going to be rough, and it's going to be nasty. It ain't going to be nothing regular. Like you said, boys, you better lace them up tight, because we going to get it on, and get it on hard, from one end of the building to the other.
I have won back my belt, and now I have 2 belts around my waist. And after this week, me and Mean Mike Miller right here, the baddest man I know, we are going to have the Moondogs. And that'll be 3 belts around my waist, you understand? Because with Mike Miller right here, all his brawn and all my brains, it's going to be a domination, boys, you understand? Because all 3 of you, you put all your brains together, they'd fit in a thimble, you understand? You have no brains.
Fire, I'm going to find you. Eddie Marlin ain't going to protect you like he did Bubba Johnson.
Oh, come on. You're the one that started all of that with her. Dave, everything that I wanted, planned for, and hoped for is about to come true. There are 4 people left that are in my way, and they're about to be gone. This week, Monday night in the Memphis Mid-South Coliseum, the granddaddy and the mother of all wrestling matches, all 4 of the people that I hate, Jerry Lawler, Jeff Jarrett, and the Moondogs, have been sanctioned in a match, and it's all going to be over, and they'll be gone, and then I'll be in control, and you will be very sorry, and so will everybody else here, because this is it.
I don't know about you guys. I'm torn if my favorite part of that, or I don't know, the scariest part of that promo may be the Harris brothers promising that they're going to get it on and get it on hard with those guys come Monday night. And it ain't going to be nothing regular.
Yeah.
But I think my favorite part is Brian and Christopher proclaiming that he has 2 belts around his waist as they're draped over his shoulder. But, he was a valedictorian, so he's got that going for him.
Why did the Bruise Brothers, they were like, what, 6'6" legitimately, and they did all of their interviews at a 5'8" stance. It's just like a super crouched. I'm like, why are they crouched over? And I think, we're pretty well into this show now. We've seen one wrestling match. One. Yeah. I mean, that's it. And this interview, I mean, honestly, I like it. I'm not bad on interviews. When I was a kid, I hated this. I wanted to see the wrestling. Yeah. But this really took me out of it. It was just a barrage of, this is what I'm going to do, and this is me selling my match. And now you sell your match Monday, and now you sell your match. And there's only like maybe 10 people in that studio. Yeah. And they keep having the same like 5 guys out there every show, and it's like they're building around it. This is where they kind of lost me.
Yeah, I'm kind of like Richard, man. At this point, they've been just droning on about the same stuff for, it seemed like, 3 weeks in a row now. It has been 3 weeks for us, but it's been longer for everybody else. It's all it's the classic Memphis thing where they bleed everybody's issues together, and then they do the big group battle. Yeah. Now I've loved it with Tennessee versus Texas back a couple years before all this happened, but with this particular situation, it's a little weird because a lot of these people had different drama going on, and now they're, they spent the last couple of weeks trying to intermingle it, and it's just, I don't know, it's not cooking together properly. Yeah. It just doesn't seem right.
Just last week, Mean Mike Miller was vowing to beat up Brian Christopher for Miss Davenport. And now they're a tag team.
Meanest man I know.
You'll see a lot of that in Memphis, of course. You guys know that. But Memphis is infamous over the years for having what just painfully feels like filler shows in retrospect. And this is certainly one of them. I didn't want to say that at the top of the program. I didn't want to tune out. And we still got ways to go. People, don't tune out. We're going to have some fun. But, there's just like this show, everything about this show, and you'll see it as we continue on. Everything feels like we're stretching for time. We are just filling the airtime here. And when we get to the card for Monday night, you're going to really feel like, we're grasping at straws for to make a card for this Monday night, just because we do every Monday night, and this is what we got to work with. So we go to another break, and when we return from the break, we get a promo from Richard Lee, who is only accompanied by Moondog Spot, who has both the tag belts with him. I didn't put a clip of this because this is your standard Richard Lee promo. Nothing against Richard Lee, but you hurt my arm. We'll get revenge in this 8-man tag match we got coming up this week, et cetera, et cetera. So as you just pointed out, and this is not including commercials, but 33 minutes into this show, and we're just now going to get to our second of 3 matches on today's show. So we're about to get ready to see Jerry the King Lawler against Jeff Gaylord. Now, this is our first look at Jeff Gaylord on the podcast. Eventually, World Class went away and was replaced by the Global Wrestling Federation, and he spent some time there. Now, I mentioned this because in the Global Wrestling Federation, he was involved in a pretty infamous altercation with Hot Stuff Eddie Gilbert. I don't know if you guys have heard about this, but it's been talked about for years, this story where at a random GWF event in Dallas, because Eddie was doing the booking there. Gaylord sucker punched Gilbert during an argument in the dressing room at the Sportatorium. The two began fighting, and the fight was quickly broken up by Doug Gilbert smashing a Coke bottle over Jeff Gaylord's head. I don't question that a bit. I absolutely see that exactly how this would have played out. And so Gaylord started out speaking to Gilbert about the possibility of getting booked for GWF, and then it devolves into him sucker punching Gilbert. Fight breaks out. Doug comes in, busts a bottle over his head. Gilbert later claimed in what was universally known as the first ever shoot interview that Gaylord was paid $1,000 by a Northeastern promoter to assault him over a alleged booking that Eddie failed to show up for, which could also be true. I won't comment on that at all. But anyway, he later ended up in Memphis, and as any Memphis wrestler would, he went from babyface to heel a few times. And at one point in 1992, Jimmy Hart passed through Memphis and put Jeff Gaylord and Mr. Hughes together as a tag team, revealing that Jeff's name, his full name, was actually Jeffrey Howard Gaylord, making their tag team the Howard Hughes Connection, which was a dated reference even in 1992. And I'm sure in 2024, people will definitely have to Google that. Don't worry, people. It's not and that brings us up to speed on the history of Jeff Gaylord. Of course, you know, there's more you can tell, as Jeff Gaylord would famously go to prison not once but twice for bank robbery in his later years. But we'll save those stories for another day. Right now, he's getting ready to square off against the King. We got these in two different clips. Let's take a look at the first one now and see what you guys think of Jeffrey Howard Gaylord. But here he's just Jeff.
A Missouri Tiger with a height advantage, but Lawler with, let's see, how do I say this? With the mental ability to outsmart some opponents, perhaps including the one that's in there today. Will that work, Corey?
That sounds good to me.
The King is set to go. No, don't do it, Jerry. And, of course, he didn't. Now a little test of strength here in the center of the ring. And, again, the crowd says, don't do that. Yeah, look at Gaylord. Right of those big biceps, he says.
Gaylord,
there again.
Yeah.
Going for the test of strength. Let's see what the King does.
Lawler standing in. Angles up with Gaylord, and Gaylord twists that left hand of Lawler's.
See, now that's part of the problem with a test of strength like that. It's Gaylord's right arm, and he's right-handed against Lawler's left arm, and he's right-handed too.
I was just thinking the same thing. Lawler nails him though with a right hand.
This time,
he's going with the left hand this time.
Let's see what happens here.
Yeah, Lawler's got his right and angles up, and he grabs Gaylord's
He used
hand.
both hands.
Oh, boy.
Oh, boy, he hit him. He smacked him with it. He clotheslined him, but he had his fist doubled up as he went by him, too.
See, he doesn't have a job. They gave him a couple of apples and an orange and an old sandwich.
Well, look out, Mike Miller has just jumped into the ring here. Lawler looked like he had things going real well against Jeff Gaylord, and all of a sudden, here comes Mike Miller jumping him. Prentice holding Lawler back in the corner, while Gaylord and Mike Miller work him over.
And what samples while you out here running your mouth? Get him out of there. Pulling this kind of stuff, that's not funny either, Mike.
I think maybe this is payback time.
No, it's not payback. Get him out of here, and let's have the bout we've got scheduled.
I guess you're going to say this is ridiculous, right?
Couple of good burns in this one here. Dave starts this one out with the most subtle burn I've ever heard from Dave Brown, where basically he called Jeff Gaylord an idiot without coming out and saying it. I don't know if you caught that. Let's listen to this one little part right here real quick.
A Missouri Tiger with a height advantage, but Lawler with, let's see, how do I say this? With the mental ability to outsmart some opponents, perhaps including the one that's in there today. Will that work?
Will that work?
It'll work in there. And then, of course, Mike Sample's getting one in at the end, cracking on Corey Macklin's ridiculous, which was his unofficial catchphrase. So of course, these guys, like we said, we're stretching, we're filling time today, clearly. So these guys put in, a decent amount of time, more time than we've seen for any TV match so far in the 3 weeks we've been watching. But it was mostly more of the same of what we just showed you there, just, a little back and forth stuff like that. But of course, it ends with, Mike Miller runs in, and that's not all. We get a few.
Yeah, Jeff Jarrett, there's some help for Lawler.
Yes, sir. Jeff Jarrett comes in. There's Mike Miller. Catches Gaylord. Yes, sir. It's fair because it's 2 against 2 now, Samples. Jarrett. Moondog spot comes in. Yeah, kind of evens things up in there now. Lawler, Jarrett, and the Moondog. All over their own now when you kind of even things up. Oh, boy.
More trouble.
Lord,
hit him. They hit him on that arm.
Oh, my God.
With a chair.
Man, he nailed Richard Lee.
He's got that arm all wrapped up anyway, and now look at them work on it.
This is
silly. Prentice sliding the referee over here, while the Harris brothers. We got a free-for-all going here, fans.
Come on, Samples, leave him alone, would you? Man, action all over the floor out here.
They're still working on that arm. Richard Lee is in pain. He is rolling on the floor, and I can hear him yelling as they are re-injuring that arm that they hurt a week ago. Meanwhile, one of the Moondogs is here working against both of the Harris brothers.
Come on, Bert Prentice. Leave the referee alone, would you? Yeah, they got Richard's arm over there, boy. Richard is screaming for pain.
Now Mike Samples holding on to him while one of the Harrises jumps up and down on that right arm once again. Right on the area where it was hurt. Here's Eddie Marlin. I don't know how we're going to get this stopped, but we've got to take a break right here, fans. We will be back, and hopefully it'll all be settled when we return.
That lead splint that he had in that arm, that he could not get it off the ground.
So, two things that stood out to me about this. Number one, Jerry Lawler like the lost member of the Hart Foundation in this gear this week. Number two, I mean, that's all just standard Memphis brawling. It's what you expect. Jarrett took a little while to get out there, but that's fair game because Lawler took a while to come save him. But yeah, like you said, holy cow, they literally stomped his arm 1,000 times. Like, if you want me to believe any of this, then Richard Lee should have showed up the next week with his arm amputated because they stomped it 1,000,001 times. The Harris brothers, I mean, looked like they were laying into it pretty good. Mike Samples looked like he was cracking eggs out there, but bless his heart. He should, Lee, after that, I assumed as I'm watching this, like, Richard Lee must be going away for a little while. And when he does, he's on, I guess, show back up in a few weeks or something.
You're talking about from one end of the building to the other. There's going to be some rear end kick, and you're looking at the kickers right here. So get ready for it, because when we get our hands on you Monday night, we're going to beat you within an inch of your life. Brian Christopher, I got news for you, punk. I'm going to give you the beating Monday night you should have got a long time ago. You understand?
It sounds like the king is fired up, and when he gets fired up, he means business. You 4 guys, you 6 guys, you may have got the best of us today, but I promise you one thing, Monday night, like Jay said, we might have all our eggs in one basket. We hadn't got any excuses Monday night. It's just going to be us guys against y'all, and you boys better show up, because when the king and Jeff Jarrett get fired up, they get the job done.
Harris brothers, come hell or high water, boys, we're putting you out of wrestling. You're not doing this to me.
Monday nights when it all happens.
Not only is he not out for a few weeks, he stands up and cuts a goddamn promo.
Yeah.
Oh my God!
I couldn't do this to me.
I could not pay attention to anything Lawler or Jarrett said because of Moondog's
Doing a voodoo curse back there
the whole fucking time.
Yes, I've never really noticed that particular style of nonsense being spewed by him in promos in the past.
But when Richard Lee took over for the promo, as Richard Lee was getting into it, he got into it.
Yeah.
I love how the others just left. Like, Samples and them could have come out there and stomped his arm off again, and I don't think Jarrett and Lawler would have came back. They could have killed him and just been like, "Hey, look, dude, you should have been out there talking. We just left you."
Yeah.
So, we take another break, obviously. And clearly we are running, on a pretty thin roster here today. So when we come back from our break here, we return to what I guess you would have to call our TV main event, as it's an 8-man tag team match with Brian Christopher, Mean Mike Miller, the Bruise Brothers with Mike Samples and Bert Prentice have taken on TD Steele, Mountain Man Miller, Brian Collins. So we got a family feud going on here. Brian Collins and Todd Johnson, which is the most generic name of all time. I love it. But again, this match feels like this is nothing but just somebody's just at the curtain just doing this, like just stretch time. They beat on Todd Johnson for what felt like 40 minutes. Like, it's an 8-man tag. There's literally 3 more people to tag, and they beat on Todd Johnson forever. Like, they ran out of moves to do on Todd Johnson before finally we start having something happen. And so the only clip I took from this match, I did feel like there were a couple of fun little interactions with Brian Christopher and TD Steele.
Yeah.
I don't know if y'all caught that. But we're going to show you that. Then, of course, you guys are going to call me liar, so I had to put it in a clip, or I know nobody believed me. There was another dadgum run-in. Who would have thought? Check this out.
TD Steele, Brian Collins all over there. Christopher picks up Johnson, spins him around, and a big power slam. Takes Todd down, covers him too. TD Steele comes in it. Whoa! And Christopher lights in on TD. I think TD Steele kind of thought about it a little bit after that, but it may have been a little too late because Christopher lit in on him and is telling TD, come on in there now. Bruise Brothers pick up the chair and ram Todd Johnson right into it.
He's trying to get to the corner, but he can't make it. Brian Christopher grabs him before he can get to the tag. Outstretched hand of TD Steele. He does get over there. Christopher threw him that way.
TD with a little warm-up exercise gets in there, and he's getting loosened up, Brian Christopher, but I think it's going to take a little more than that, TD, because these guys, man, they'll do whatever it takes to beat on you. Oh, look at TD! Blocks the right, though.
Yeah, nice block by TD.
TD Steele blocks the right from Christopher and nails Brian Christopher. TD, whoa, on his little dance there, and Christopher breaks him down with that boot. Slams away on TD Steele. Tag on the big Bruise brother. Oh, and he drops that.
Some different opponents.
Yeah.
Dare I mention any names? Let's just say, well, maybe a Jeff Jarrett, maybe Jerry Lawler.
Boy,
maybe even some Moondogs in there, huh? But, Mike Samples, see if there's anybody else in the back. We're about done with these guys.
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
Yeah,
there's some guys.
Bodies. You're looking for bodies. A little bit more than bodies in there, too. Look at the king. Boy, he's got one of those hard seats in there. Slams it on Christopher. Moondog in there when they can. And they all go running out of there quickly, too.
Boy, finally we got him out of there.
Still having fun, tough guys.
What the hell was that? Everybody's got these weapons of mass destruction. Jarrett had a goddamn boat paddle. The Moondog had a garbage can. And then Lawler comes out with a fucking stadium cushion. Did you see it?
Yeah, it's crazy. That. Like, somebody like, I can only imagine, like, either Moondog or Mountain Man Miller, they had to have this crap in the back of their truck. Like, if y'all got some shit out there we can hit people with, like, yeah, there's something. Just open the camper.
I love the face on Mountain Man Miller as they finally run in. He had this look on his face like, y'all couldn't have done this 5 minutes ago.
Yeah, like, oh,
thank God. Our ass whipped.
So I know we're not selling this where anybody's going to want to go back and watch this episode, folks. If you do, or if you watched it beforehand, so again, they just beat on Todd Johnson for several minutes, and Collins and Mountain Man are just there on the apron. They're not even like they don't even look interested to watch the match, much less be involved. They're just standing there witnessing this. Meanwhile, TD Steele is hopping up and down. Come on, let's go. He's fired up through this whole thing like the tag belts are on the line. And the other guys are standing there like, the fuck's this guy doing? And so finally, rather than using this momentum and let Todd Johnson slip out of something and get a hot tag on TD Steele, since he's actually kind of fired up, we pick this dude up off the mat like a corpse and throw him at TD Steele so that he can come in. And Brian actually gave him a couple little spots there, But the weird part about this, they let TD get a couple of things. Then, of course, they shut him down. And he goes over and makes a tag on Mountain Man. At first, Mountain Man doesn't take the tag, and then he won't come in the ring. Like it's a heel turn or something, like when Paul Diamond turned on Billy Travis and them, and to the point that Dave Bramlin even acknowledged, they're like, Mountain Man got tagged, but he won't get in the ring. Oh, Mountain Man don't want to get in there, and I don't blame him. But it takes a couple of minutes. I guess finally somebody on the floor is like, "Hey, dumbass, get in the ring!" Because he finally gets in the ring, but he's not happy about it. And then they do like 2 spots, and like you say, they run in, and he looks relieved. The only thing I can figure is he must have gotten told, like, look, you're not going to get tagged in. Don't worry. And then he got tagged in, and he's like, what the? And they were like, get in. And he had to take a few bumps and before they finally ran in. Because like you said, his face said everything. Like, what the hell was that? Why did where you been? That was the weirdest match.
Do you think that shot from Brian when TD Steele walked into the ring, when he was going to do the pickup, do you think that was a live round and it might have spooked him? And it might have spooked him a little bit because he didn't want to get shot on.
It absolutely looked like it. That didn't look like your typical babyface come in and try to break the pin and they catch a little fire. Like Brian jumped up and lit his ass up
Yeah, and TD didn't sell it either. He was jawing when he got back on so I was like, maybe that's why Mountain Man didn't want to get in there, because he was like, all right, this is really going.
It probably was, because like you said, it was weird after that, because then he picks up Todd. I'm wondering if any of them was really supposed to get him besides Todd Johnson, because he picks Todd Johnson up and throws him at TD. Like, all right, then, you want to get in? And so then TD comes in and he's doing all that dancing and silly shit. And then, Brian takes a couple of punches from him and then they shut him down. But the other thing that gets me, and I know the rules are kind of all over the place in Memphis, and the Moondogs do their thing, and the Harris brothers, but usually they do it behind the ref's back or before the match starts or after the match. But at one point, you can go back and you can pause the screen. The Harris brothers are beating this guy with a chair right in front of referee Kevin Christian, and we're just nothing. It's just like no disqualification, there's just nothing. We just throw him back in, and it's like, okay, so we're just not pretending to have any rules here. I mean, not that it really matters, but at the same time, it's like, well, if you don't enforce some rules, then none of it really means anything. Right. But, and again, folks, we're not up here trying to, shit on Memphis wrestling, but I don't think anybody on that show that day would tell you this is a high water mark for them. But we're going to go ahead and let Dave Brown run down the card for Monday night real quick. Then we're going to take a break, and then we're going to, I guess it'll be kind of anticlimactic in many ways, but we're going to get you guys' thoughts on this week's show and whether or not you would want to go see it. So let's check this out.
This one should be a good one. You'll want to be there on time.
Yeah.
Terror number one involved in the match against Jeff Jarrett here today, and he was just rude at the beginning of the whole thing, and he didn't improve later on. He will be going against Scott Campione in the opening match of the night. Danny Davis, fine wrestler, veteran, will be going against Jeff Gaylord. We talked about the Missouri Tiger a bit during his match here today against Lawler. He is also a tough customer, and this has the makings of a mighty good match. Coming after that, you got Jeff Jarrett and Jerry Lawler. This time they're going to step in the ring in tag team action, going against the Bruise Brothers, Ron and Don Harris. But whatever the result of that match, that won't be the end of it for the night, I guarantee you. USWA Tag Titles will be on the line after that. The Moondogs with Richard Lee, even though his arm is injured and in a sling, he'll be there at ringside, I guarantee you, as they step in against Brian Christopher and Mean Mike Miller with the USWA Tag Titles at stake. Then,
I love this one coming up
here, boy. This match right here, worth the price of admission all by itself, anywhere in the nation. SAPPHIRE teaming with Miss Texas. SAPPHIRE greatly misled by Bert Prentice, who got her to come out here and say some things, and she didn't really realize what all was going on and what Prentice was really talking about. So she is going to be teamed with Miss Texas as they go against Leslie Ballinger and Lauren Davenport in what should be a most interesting women's tag team match. Then, special added match that we told you about a little bit earlier. Jeff has the match. Jeff just made a comment in passing in an interview. He said, I could beat all 4 of those guys together and just let it go at that. Well, Prentice takes exception to it, brings it out here as a challenge, as a statement of fact that he can beat everybody, and he can't do that, and we're going to approve it. So what do? They jump him. And not only was it 4 against 1, it was 5 against 1. However, a few minutes later, Jeff proved he could hold his own. He brought a board with him, but he proved he could hold his own. I wouldn't be surprised if he didn't bring about half a lumber yard with him Monday night at the Mid-South Coliseum.
That's interesting to see, too.
Absolutely. He steps in against Zeke Rivers, Mr. Clyde, Mike Samples, and Bert Prentice. Throw them all in the air and let Jeff Jarrett go after him. Then, 8-man tag team match coming after that. The Moondogs, Lawler, Jarrett, and Richard Lee will be going against the Harris brothers, Ron and Don, Brian Christopher, Mean Mike Miller, and Mike Samples. What a match that one should be to wrap up a tremendous night of action coming up Monday night at the Mid-South Coliseum. 7:30 is the time. Make your plans to be right there.
All right, so Dave Brown is, great weatherman and has a lot of credibility with the people of Memphis. But he just lost all his credibility with me when he said that Sapphire Miss Texas against Leslie Ballinger and Lauren Davenport would be worth the price of admission in any arena in the country. And that this was going to be a great night of action.
Is one of them going to fight to the death?
I'll let y'all talk a little more about this when we get to the questions here in a minute. Right now, let's take our final podcast commercial break, and then we'll get into it.
Hey guys, Ray Russell here, curator of the WrestleCopia Podcast Network, inviting you guys to listen to many of the programs here as part of the WrestleCopia brand, including, but not limited to, the Wrestling Memory Grenade, currently covering the 1988 and the WWF project. You can also listen to the Regional Wrestling Podcast, where we talk the territories, whether it's Jamie Ward with Georgia 81, Roman Gomez with the UWF in 1986, or Gene Jackson covering Memphis in 85. 3 projects going on right now over there at Regional Wrestling. You can also listen to the Wrestling Stoop with the legend himself, Bob Roop. Bob goes back in time each and every week, covering not just his career, but countless stories and interactions with hundreds of wrestling names spanning his 2 decades in the business. But that's not all. You can also check out the Puro Wrestling Academy with the professor of Puro Resu, Mr. Dan Ginnity. Dan and I go back in time and cover the history of Japanese professional wrestling in the English language. And you can listen to all of those shows and more, all part of the WrestleCopia Podcast Network, located over at WrestleCopia.com. That's WrestleCopia.com, and anywhere your podcast streaming needs are met, from Apple to Spotify, Pocket Cast, and beyond. And while you're at it, why not subscribe to our social media guys for all the latest goings on here at the WrestleCopia Podcast Network. Plus, I'm constantly adding old school video clips and pictures from throughout wrestling history. You can follow us over on X, formerly Twitter, at Wrestling Grenade. That's at RASSLIN Grenade. Also, follow and like me, Facebook.com/Wrestling Grenade. And why not subscribe to YouTube.com/Wrestling Grenade. So if you're looking to support that next up and coming podcast brand, please consider making it WrestleCopia.
All right, guys, this question all these questions may be a little hard. At least the first 2 questions may be a little hard, but both for different reasons. But this is the time of the show, guys, where I ask y'all the all-important questions. Having watched today's episode, number 1, what was your least favorite part of the show?
The lack of matches. Just 3 matches. And like I said before, I feel like there was like 9 wrestlers in that whole building, and they just kept using them over and over and over and over again. So that would be my least favorite part of the show.
Josh?
Mine was, just the Bruise Brothers, Mike Miller and Brian Christopher versus the 4 enhancement guys. Like, that match was way too long. It legit, I think, was over 15 minutes long. Like they just kept beating them and beating them and beating them and beating on them and beating on them over and over again. And, I know it was supposed to showcase kind of the 8-man match coming up on Monday. These group of guys are going to be kicking ass Monday night or whatever. I get it, but good God, man, it felt like legit a time filler. That's what it was. It just, after so long, let's trim the fat and let's just get on out of here. These boys can't take much more. Like they were weekend at Bernieing fucking Todd Johnson.
I don't understand why Todd Johnson had to take almost all of it. I mean, I don't think Brian Collins got anything until the end there. But I just want to point out for people keeping score, all 3 of our episodes now that we've had, Josh's least favorite part of the show has involved the Bruise Brothers. I don't know if he realizes that. Just pointing that out. That may come back into play later, but we won't embellish on it right now. All right, second question, and this may even be harder than the first question. What is your favorite part of this week's show?
Watching that board explode over Mr. Clyde's head, and then reaction of Mike Samples when he got hit. I also enjoyed Jeff Jarrett taking part in his own ass whipping. That was a fun part for me to watch.
Mine was the whole Bert Prentice Sapphire Miss Texas thing. I mean, Bert is legit one of my favorite managers of all time. Like of any wrestling promotion. To me, he was really good and believable. Like I've said before, it looks like in his eyes that he believes the stuff that he's saying. And whenever Lawler came out there and interrupted, he just started smothering Sapphire like a blanket, just hugging all over, trying to maintain that friendship. And Lawler just keeps chopping him down, and, even while Sapphire was kicking his ass, he would just pause in the middle of it. That is Bubba Johnson. And then she'd hit him some more. I love that. Bert was so funny. And he, a lot of times with wrestling, you want things to be serious. And a lot of times you want it to be funny or this or that. But Bert, he was a master of the funny moments. It just on another level.
This is okay. So this is kind of out of left field, but since you said that, I don't know when I'll get another chance to tell this. I'm going to tell this real quick. So you talked about Bert Prentice being your all-time favorite manager. Me and my wife, Rose, went to a Ring of Honor show in. No. I tell a lie. It wasn't a Ring of Honor show. It was a Aero Lucha show. A freaking Lucha Libre promotion that was run by the Harris brothers. So Josh would have liked it. But and I think Rey Mysterio had a hand in it. Conan was involved. But anyway, they did a show at the fairgrounds in Nashville. And they had a lot of names on the card. We got to meet Conan and Rey Mysterio and get pictures with a bunch of people we had wanted to meet for a long time. But anyway, we get there. And we're walking through there. And in all my fandom in wrestling, I had been to shows where Bert Prentice was on the show, but he was always a heel manager or something, He's standing at a gimmick table, and he's got the famous Bert Prentice mystery boxes out there. And we're walking along, and Rosie's, she's been in the room when I've watched Memphis wrestling and stuff, but she didn't, she watched more Continental and her as a kid than she did Memphis. And I just stopped my truck. I was like, holy shit, that's Bert Prentice. And she's like, so? I'm like, I'm fixing to buy one of these damn boxes. And she's like, what are you talking? I was like, come on. So we go up there, and I'm like, oh, my God, it's Bert Prentice, the legend. And he kind of looks at me, and I'm like, man, I got to buy one of these boxes. I said, but only if you'll sign it and take a picture with me. And so he's looking at me crazy. He thinks I'm messing with him. He's like, I was like, no, man, I'm being completely serious right now. I've heard about these boxes for years. I'm like, I've watched you all, most of my life. I'm like, super cool meeting you. I'd like to get a picture, and I'd like to, he's like, okay. Once he realized I wasn't messing with him. Yeah. So there's a picture on my Facebook somewhere of me and Bert Prentice holding this damn mystery box, and he signs the top of it, and I've still got it in a closet over here somewhere. And so he's like, so you're being real. You wanted to meet me and get one of these boxes. Like, yeah, man, these boxes are famous. And he's like, well, hold on, I want to get you a good one. So he sits inside. He starts reaching in all these boxes, and he goes, "Oh, there it is." So then he signs that one instead, and he hands it to me. He's like, "Here you go. That's a good one." I'm like, "All right." So we go to sit down in our seats, and Rosie's like, "Let's open them." I'm like, no. Like we're gonna put this on freaking YouTube. Like one of those unboxing videos were just starting to become a thing, you know.
Yeah.
So we watch the show. We go home. We don't like the next day, like the next afternoon. She's like, "Hey, we didn't ever open that box." I was like, "Oh shit, grab your phone." So we go in there, and she starts recording me. Unfortunately, this video is lost when my previous YouTube channel got roasted and done away with. It's gone now. But so we open it up, and there's a Mickey James poster in there, and but the thing he was feeling around for, there was a Sting sweatshirt in there. But to look at me, I guess he didn't realize that a 2X Sting sweatshirt wasn't even going to begin to go, wasn't even going to begin to fit me. And then I forget, there was a couple silly, like promo pictures of like some of those Nashville guys and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But it's so funny because like he almost looked like he was going to run away, like he thought I was ribbing him, like we were fixing to like pull like a Ashton Kutcher or some shit on him. So bless his heart. But I thought I was more psyched to meet Bert Prentice, being an old school Memphis and Nashville wrestling fan, than I was to meet Mysterio and there's a lot of the guys, Swerve Strickland and some of those guys we met. So the last question, sorry to break into the continue there, everybody. But I didn't know when I'd ever have a chance to tell that story, quite honestly. If this was actually 1993, would today's TV that we have put over so strongly and affectionately have inspired you to buy a ticket to this Monday night's card?
Probably not this one, because I feel like I've seen it all on TV for the past 3 weeks. Yeah. For me, I probably wouldn't have wanted to go to this one.
Yeah, for me, I'm gonna have to vote no on that, dog. I said it before. It just seemed like they've been stretching the stories and just trying to make it last one more week, man. Just one more week. That's what it feels like. And I've had about enough of it. Even back then, I'd had about enough of it. Right now, I've really had about enough of it because I'm starting to remember all this stuff.
Right. And usually they had a knack for, just like with the Brian and Jeff Jarrett and the Moondogs and Harris's, they had a knack for putting another twist on it that might pull something out of you. But then you'd hit a week like this one where, to me, as we go down the results here in just a moment, there's nothing there that is going to compel me. After I've seen these guys wrestle as many times as I have, after I saw all the crap on this TV show today, there's no real stakes in any of these matches. It's just the conglomeration of a big 8-man tag. All right, so January 18th, 1993. Oh, I'm sorry. I got sidetracked with my Bert Prentice story. I skipped over. We have to do the Nashville show. I should have remembered because we were talking about Bert Prentice, but very quickly. In Nashville, the night after we saw the show we just saw, 500 people came out to see Tony DiNucci beat Jeff Gaylord by disqualification. Leslie Ballinger and Lauren Davenport went to a no contest. So it's kind of fun to think that after they were on TV that morning, hugging up with Mike Miller and setting up a tag match with Miss Texas and Sapphire, they had to get in the car, drive to Nashville, and go wrestle each other again. The next match, we saw Danny Davis beat the Master of Terror, Ken Wayne. No word if it was a DQ like Memphis, but everything else is following along, so I have to assume it probably was. Miss Texas beat Bert Prentice by disqualification. Jerry Lawler beat Mean Mike Miller. No mention of Bruno being the referee. I'm sure he wasn't. He probably had a WWE show that night. Moondog Spot beat Ron Harris in a singles match. I think there'll be more to that to come down the line as we move through these shows. And then Brian Christopher defeated Jeff Jarrett to win the Southern Heavyweight title. I guess we didn't really have to circle back to that, but it's how we do the show, folks. We got to follow protocol, right? Or what do we have? All right, so January 18th, Mid-South Coliseum. Again, I scoured the internet. I scoured through the Observer, the Torch, everything I could find. Nobody had the attendance for this. And I really was curious to how low the attendance dipped on this one. Because I gotta figure we're a long way from that 3,500 we had 3 weeks ago, I would assume. In the opening match, Master of Terror #1, Ken Wayne, beat Scott Campione. Danny Davis beat Jeff Gaylord. Jerry Lawler and Jeff Jarrett beat Ron and Don Harris by DQ. Moondog Spot and Danny Davis, subbing for Moondog Spike, beat Brian Christopher and Mike Miller. Miss Texas and Sapphire beat Leslie Ballinger and Lauren Davenport. No mention of a DQ. Jeff Jarrett beat Mike Samples, Bert Prentice, and Mr. Clyde in a handicap match. No Zeke Rivers. He was not at the show. Then in the main event, Brian Christopher, Mean Mike Miller, Ron and Don Harris defeated Jerry the King Lawler, Jeff Jarrett, and Moondog Spot, along with Tony DiNucci subbing for Moondog Spike instead of Danny Davis. So, heels win in the main event there in the 8-man tag. So, having heard that, do you think like, I would have really wanted to have seen that. I chose poorly.
I had school the next day. I couldn't go. No, I feel like sticking with what I said, and it looked like even I was gonna say it looked like even some of the wrestlers are saying, "No, I'm out," because you had like 3 there that didn't show up.
Yeah, I mean, for me, hearing that Scott Campione lost and that Zeke Rivers wasn't there, I wouldn't want to see that.
Yeah.
We're going to find out next week that Moondog Spike is severely injured and is going to be out. Now, I'm still trying to do some research to confirm if that's legitimate that Moondog Spike was actually injured, or if it's one of these deals where, it's an issue over pay, like he wanted some. And
well, all this didn't start till they started going to the gym.
Yeah.
They get all uppity. Like, look, these gym memberships ain't free, it turns out.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't know what Spot was talking about. He come at them with that gibberish, and they're just like, I don't know, man. Well, all right. Well, there you go, man. That was episode 3, week 3 of USWA. And guys, we appreciate you sticking with us if you did. And again, I can't stress enough how much better things are going to get as we move along through 1993 here in USWA. We're about to see some WWF people showing up pretty quick, which we did here. We saw, Miss Sapphire, even though she was 2 years removed from being a Memphis person. So that's a bit of a stretch, but I think they were counting it in their mind. But again, before we go, I just want to remind everybody, P3 Radio is available everywhere you enjoy podcasts. Just search for P3 Radio as it appears on your screen if you're watching this on video. And if you're not, you're really missing out. You're not getting to see the video clips that we're showing, and you don't get to see the handsome faces of Josh and Richard, although you are avoiding seeing my big sweaty head this week because I look rough after I always look rough, but I look especially rough this week. I apologize for that. But also you can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Retro Wrestling Review. Actually, Retro Wrestling Review on Facebook, USWA Podcast on Twitter and Instagram. I apologize. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, or requests, if you got any feedback for us, anything of the sort, if you want to do an ad swap with us and get your commercials here on the show, you can email USWApodcast@outlook.com. Also, check out the Retro Wrestling Network YouTube channel, where you can see all of the available USWA TV shows that we've been able to find in existence. They're all right there, plus 1,000 other wrestling videos at youtube.com/@Retro Wrestling Network. And don't forget WrestleCopia.com and join the WrestleCopia Patreon. And we will see you here next week for more